Shabbat Shalom. In the years prior to World War II, it was well known that these two groups of Hasidim didn't get along very well. The Belzer Hasidim and the Munkacher Hasidim. And they told the story of a follower of the Belzer Rebbe who lived in the town of Munkach. He lived in the town of the other Hasidim. And he would give the other Rebbe problems to know, and he was so loyal to his own rabbi, he was so loyal to his own Rebbe, and he would argue and he would debate and he would agitate the Munkacher Rebbe until one time the Munkacher Rebbe, as the story goes, just had enough. And he turned to this chassid and he said, I'm going to curse you that you should die with your talis on. You should die with your talis on. It's a strange curse. And what does it mean? One can imagine a number of terrible scenarios what that curse means. But then this chassid came to a new understanding, because a few short years later the war broke out, the Holocaust, the devastation, the tragedy. And this chassid, the one who was cursed, found himself in the concentration camps. And he had no fear. He didn't think. He knew. He knew he wasn't going to perish. Why? Because in the camps there were no talesim. Wasn't one to be found. They would daven, they would do whatever they could in whatever quiet moments they could find. But no one had a talis. And the Rebbe told him, you're going to die with your talis on. And he knew, as long as he was in the camps, as long as he didn't have a talis, he was protected by the Rebbe's curse. A curse was a blessing in this case. And it's an extraordinary thought that so much of life and so much of how we understand the world is just a matter of perspective. And that point is put forward by our Torah portion this week. As in Parshat Shlach, the spies are sent out, and the spies are told what to look for. And one of the elements that they're supposed to look for is to look if the cities in the land of Israel are b'mivtsarim, are they fortified or not? Do they have walls around them or not? That's what Moses instructs them to look for. And they come back and they say, oh, they're fortified, they're too strong for us. We can't go into the land because look how strong their cities are. They're fortified. And I heard a beautiful interpretation that said, well, what do they know of fortified cities, unfortified cities? These people who are going into the land, where did they come from last? They were slaves in the land of Egypt. And then they left Egypt and they've been wandering in the wilderness. How do they know about construction around cities? What do they know about walls, about no walls? What do they know about safety and security? They know nothing. Moses told them, Moshe, who knew something because Moshe grew up in the palace, Moshe told them, look to see if the cities have walls or not. The people understood one thing. They understood, what does it mean if a city has walls? It means that it's a strong city. It means that it's impenetrable. It means that we can't get in. We can't win. We can't prevail if there are walls. But Moses understood it differently. Moshe said, look to see if they have walls. What did he mean? Because if they have walls, it's a sign that they're weak. It's a sign that they need the walls. What do you do if you're insecure? What do you do if you need extra protection? You build walls. That's what we do as human beings. We create walls and barriers, whether they're physical barriers or metaphysical barriers or interpersonal barriers. That's the way we deal with our insecurities. Moses said, go see if their cities have walls, because if they do, he meant it means that they're weak. But the people heard walls and they said, oh, walls equals strength. It's just a matter of perspective. And isn't that so much of life? Is just a matter of from what angle are you looking at a matter. I love the story that they tell about the couple who moves into a new neighborhood, and they're sitting there at their kitchen table one day, their new kitchen table, and the wife looks outside the window and she sees her neighbor is hanging her washed clothing, hanging her laundry on the line next door. And the woman says to her husband, "Oh, look at our neighbor. Look how dirty the clothing is. She's hanging on the line there. It's so dirty. It's filthy. Maybe she doesn't have good soap. Maybe she doesn't have the proper way to wash the clothing. Maybe she doesn't know how to wash the clothing properly." And the next morning, the same thing happens. And she says, "Oh, look how dirty the neighbor's clothing." And the next day, the same thing. And then finally, on the fourth day, she looks out the window and she sees the clothing is sparkling clean. And she says to her husband, "Something must have happened. Did you say something to the neighbor? Did you teach her how to wash her clothing? Did you maybe help them in some way?" And the husband says, "No, I just washed our windows." Because so often it's a matter of perspective, whether the lens through which we're looking at life, the window. If it's a dirty window, then what is on the other side is going to appear dirty. If it's clean, then what on the other side is going to appear clean. That's the nature of life, the lenses that we put on to look at the world around us. That determines how we see. Is it a blessing or is it a curse? So much relies on our perspective. And I bless all of us on this Shabbat that we should have the perspective of goodness, that what we see, what we embrace, how we take in the world around us begins not with our eyes, but with our hearts and with what we're preparing ourselves to see. And the spiritual energy that we bring to the world around us determines the experience that we ourselves will have. We think that our lives are so influenced by the outside, by the external. But really, it's influenced primarily by the energy that we bring with our souls to the interactions and the experiences that we are blessed to have. Wishing you a Shabbat Shalom.